Hello and welcome to Media MD, your fortnightly Doof Network dose of media that you have somehow missed. I'm Ruben Morehouse.
I'm Elliot Diebold.
And we are joined again by Doof Media alums, I guess you can call them, Scott Daly and Matt Freeman.
How's it
Hi.
going, guys? We're happy to be here to fix you guys. That's what
As always.
that's what we're doing. We're
That's the
fixing
job. Yes, we are back to talk about Terminator and T2, Judgment Day. Where should we start? Do you want to summarize the plot of T1 and I'll do T2, Elliot?
Yeah, sure. I will say I'm glad we got to watch both of these. I think they work really well as a pair.
I was surprised by how different T2 is to T1.
But it works off it. Yeah, I'll
should we
just
talk
explain
about them
the plot.
separately or together, or what should we do? How do you guys want to approach these bundles of movies?
I mean, I think like T2 is like one of my favorite movies ever, and I would be totally fine spending more time talking about that one. And I think Matt feels
agree.
the same. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, let's start with T1, give a bit of a discussion on that, then move into T2, and we can kind of do some comparison stuff during that as well.
Yeah,
Sure.
I think that makes sense. Okay, well, so T1 is basically we get this bit of exposition at the start that there was like a nuclear war in the future, and the human resistance has had to send someone back in time to prevent a robot who was also sent back in time from killing the mother of the resistance. Which in this day and age, I was just kind of like, okay, like sure, time travel plot, like fairly basic, but like there's a beauty in the simplicity of this. Because basically Sarah's just like the most averagest like person ever. And she kind of gets swept into this war between like this future soldier man, who we eventually learn's name is Kyle. I've just got him as Humanman in my notes for most of it. And then Arnie is obviously like this evil robot, and the evil robot's just running around trying to kill Sarah. But they end up killing the robot at the end. And it's kind of left, as it's like, okay, now she's going to go off and raise her son.
She heads off to Mexico, right?
Yeah, and it turns out the father is actually the guy who got sent back, which was just like it's so fun, like just as an idea, because it's like, well,
Isn't it the best? Isn't it the best that the father of the resistance is the future person that was sent back because of this to try to stop the resistance? Like the Terminator or the machines created their own problem. It's just the best. I love it.
yes. Although T2 kind of suggests that also the problem the machines created themselves. It gets weird in T2. We'll get there.
Yes.
But it's I just love this idea that like that Kyle was hanging out with his son, but his son was his boss who knew, but he didn't. And there's that sort of moment where he's back in time and he's like, oh fuck, like yeah, okay, so fun. Anyway, but so that's sort of where this first one leads off. It doesn't invite a sequel necessarily, but I'm glad that it got one.
Yeah, totally. So,
sorry, please.
How much of this movie did y'all know about? Because I think on the prescription episode, like y'all were talking about some crazy shit, and I was really surprised that you didn't know the basic plot of robot is sent back in time to try to stop the leader of a resistance in the future. Like it's basically the kill Hitler plot, and I was surprised that y'all didn't know that at all, or it didn't seem like you knew it at least.
I knew like maybe some of those vague points. I knew robot back in time stuff.
Yeah,
but I didn't really know the
that
context.
a robot was sent back in time, and that's it.
Yeah,
Along with some miscellaneous, like cultural points, like he's wears sunglasses all the time and shit.
Yeah, there's the "I'll be back" line in this, which is nowhere near as much emphasis is placed on that line as I would have expected, given like how much of a cultural meme it's become. Like, "I'll be back" is such an iconic phrase, and it's not even used in an action scene or anything. He just says it to a policeman before he, comes back in a car. But it is a great moment.
14 lines. 14 lines.
Yeah, I like what you said earlier about the simplicity, because that, comparing the two, I guess, like Terminator 1 is like boiled down and simple and almost like simplistic in a way, like iconic villain, right? Like Scott just pointed out, he says so few things. He's like just kind of this perfectly relentless, like scary character. yeah, that's what I like about that movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically a horror movie, right?
Yeah, I was surprised by how much it felt like a horror movie. It feels like a slasher, especially in the first half where the Terminator's going around murdering all the people called Sarah Connor or you know, her roommate and roommate's partner. And it feels like a horror movie for that first half of the movie. And that doesn't go away, I don't think. Like the ending sequence where she's, you know, crawling away through a factory and this half of a Terminator is crawling after her it's horrific. It's horrifying.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, when its flesh burns off and it's chasing in skeleton form. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, and I love, like, you know, how ceaseless the Terminator is. Like, we've talked about It Follows here, and, like, I could see if It Follows was said to have drawn inspiration from the Terminator, I'd get that, because it's just, it feels like this machine that will not stop marching. Like, even when it gets chopped in half, it's still crawling after her. It's like such a great horror baddie because of the way it just doesn't stop.
Yeah, and how freaking good is Arnold Schwarzenegger in this movie? Like, it's incredible. Apparently, he like trained for months about like firing guns, reloading guns, cleaning guns, because he wanted it so down pat that it looked mechanical, it looked machine like. He like just went to like firing ranges and just fired guns over and over again, so he would never flinch when pulling a trigger. Like, he went all out for this movie, and I think it really does show. It's a remarkable, like, yeah, he doesn't say like anything, but it's a remarkable performance. Just his presence, like, it's like you look at this guy and you're like, of course, superstar, like, of course, like there's no other path for this guy.
Yeah, it's funny because usually, like, you're calling an actor's performance like robotic or wooden is a bit of an insult, but like here he's actually sort of showing how it can be hard to do that like properly.
Yeah, I think another acting thing is I just love the transformation of Sarah Connor from, like you said, like average person into, you know, you're terminated, fucker, like selling that line by the end. And of course, Linda Hamilton then blows us away, you know, with the second movie too, obviously. So.
Yes, the second movie gives us a lot more to talk about with her journey, because like she has one in Terminator, but it's all within the span of like 24 hours, and she just kind of, you know, gets fucked up. I mean, there's so many little gems in these movies as well. Like, they're really well put together. Like, I love the dog setup. We get so much teaching us that dogs don't trust Terminators. And then they have the scene in the motel and the dog outside just starts barking, and you're like, oh, like, beautiful. Like, it totally makes sense that they're getting the warning.
Yeah. I really like the small moments in this meet. Like, you know, we meet these two cops, and we don't really get to know them very well at all. They're just two cops kind of just like dealing with the fact that suddenly Sarah Connors are dying and we don't know what to do with them. And one of them played by Lance Henriksen, who's just amazing. And there's just these little simple moments where like one of the dudes exhausted, like the line's like, "How do I look? You look like shit." And he's like, "Yo, mama," and just walks off. And then like when he's like getting Advil and drinking out of the coffee, and he's like, "That coffee is two hours old." And I put a cigarette in it. Like, there's these little tiny moments that don't like matter to the story, but I think just like make these characters, like, it feels like we're just like getting a window into what it is like for these police detectives day to day, and then the fucking machine storms into their life and just destroys them. I don't know. Like, I love the detail there. I think James Cameron does like inter-character detail so well. And that's one of the places that it really shines.
Yeah, well, it makes that raid on the police station feel more impactful, that I had actually grown to care about two of the characters who were, you know, just destroyed by Arnie.
Yeah, definitely. Just like unceremoniously wiped out. Like, a movie doesn't even shoot their deaths any different than it shoots the deaths of any of the unnamed cops. Like, it's almost as if it's just like, we don't care. They don't matter. And it's like shocking in that regard. Like, you figure like we spent some time with these guys. You figure it'd be like, oh God, I'm sad. I'm sad to see you die, guy whose name I don't remember, but I still feel bad about it. Yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah, I thought it was really well done.
Bill Paxton gets his heart ripped out, so that's
he does.
One of the other things I want to talk about for this movie was the effects in it. I mean, we'll talk about this in T2 as well, because it gets pretty heavily CGI in T2, but in the first Terminator, it's all, from what I can tell, a lot of stop motion and a lot of like robotics. And I was really impressed by how well the stop motion less so, but the robotics, damn, looks so fucking good.
Yeah.
There's
The
one
stop
where I
motion
think it's a
the stop motion just had that unfortunate effect where the frame rate was different, so
Yes.
you
Yeah.
could just tell when it was that.
Yeah,
there was
which-
one cool shot where it was, I think, a stop motion Arnie walking towards a live action in the police station raid, I think it was, and it looked
Yeah.
very cool. But apart from that, it was pretty jerky.
Yeah, but you know, honestly, like for me, and maybe this is nostalgia talking, but like some of the badness of the special effects makes it seem otherworldly in a way that I actually like.
Mm-hmm.
I
can see that.
I can see that. I mean, for me, there was just this ironic line where Kyle's briefly talking to Sarah about like how the humanoid Terminators like started to come about, and he's like, there were these T-600s and they had rubber for skin and we could spot them instantly. And then like 2 scenes later, we get the thing where Arnie's in the bathroom, like sort of pulling his face apart or whatever, and it was so obviously like rubber and prop work, and I was just like, oh yeah, I can see what Kyle was talking about. He doesn't look human right now.
Yeah, I mean they're doing as best as they can, but there's a very clear, obvious transition between Arnold Schwarzenegger sitting in the chair looking into the mirror and animatronic rubber covered guy.
Yeah.
But I think that's such an excellent scene though, because he's like
Yeah.
he like rips his eye out, and it's like it's just so creepy. I love it.
The whole movie does a great job of really making Arnie feel inhuman.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we haven't actually called out the differences in how Kyle and Arnie sort of spawn in the 1980s. Like you know, Arnie just sort of spawns and immediately starts killing and overpowering people, whereas like Kyle is like running from the police and like fending for scraps, and it so just like mirrors the dynamic that we get the impression of exists in the future. Like Kyle is on the bottom even when he comes in here. That's just sort of the mindset he has.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Yeah, he's a scrappy underdog.
Yeah, it's such a stark contrast, especially in a movie like where you probably maybe didn't like. Imagine the first time someone saw this without seeing the trailer. Like they don't know who these two people are, and we know one of them is bad. I think the movie makes it pretty clear that Arnie's bad right away, but we don't know who Kyle Reese is. We don't really know what's going on very much. We just got that little bit of exposition. So yeah, I mean, I think telegraphing that via the fact that he's basically wearing a homeless guy's clothes for the entire first half of the movie, I think is really, really perfect.
Yeah, and they have a lot of fun with that in T2 as well that we'll get to.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask the panel is like, so there's obviously this for want of a better word, relationship between Sarah and Kyle. And it's just so messed up, isn't it? But like, I couldn't figure out who I felt was the victim, so I've just decided that they're both kind of victims. Because Kyle's been like, there's this weird thing. John has basically helped Kyle become like obsessed with Sarah by giving him a photo and everything. So like, John's weirdly kind of groomed his dad to be in love with his mum, who he then sends back, who then gets completely traumatized. And I was just like, this is just such a messed up relationship. Like, it's probably for the best that it only lasted a night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think they're both sort of victims of fate in like the classic Greek tragedy sense, right? They're trapped by fate.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think I think one of the biggest differences between this movie and the sequel is this idea of what can we change and what can't we change. And in this movie, it just seems like things are just playing out the way they always should, right? Like this is the way it was always going to happen. This is the way it has to happen. And every one of our characters is just kind of swept up into that and a victim of it. And kind of powerless to it. And the word I'm thinking right now is Ka, because we're reading the Dark Tower series. But I think the second movie kind of intentionally sets out to dive into that and explore that on a deeper level. But the first movie is literally just like, this is just the way it was always happened. That's their view on time travel. It's like, this happened because it happened.
So yeah, but that's actually the twist, kind of, because Kyle arrives and he's like, we can change the future and everything's in jeopardy. And then it's like, as you get to the end of the movie, it's like, oh, actually he was always John's dad. And so then you kind of like, at the end, I was like, oh, okay, so it turns out this is the time travel where it always happened. And then T2 is kind of like, well, but actually, no.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, T2 at least ends ambiguously, where you don't know for sure that they succeeded in stopping Judgment Day. And in fact, if you go on to the later movies, they didn't. Forget about those though.
Yeah, I've actually got in my notes at the end of T2. I was like, oh, there's a nice ambiguous ending, except that I know there's more. So I guess they didn't succeed.
I just consider this to be the end of the series, honestly.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, like the explanations for why they didn't stop Judgment Day and for why there are still more Terminators and why there are more fucking Arnold machines coming back just gets thinner and thinner as the series goes on.
Yeah.
I've developed a headcanon personally, and this probably doesn't hold up in the later ones, but I've decided that Skynet had some sort of limit in its programming where it's not allowed to develop new weapons, because that's the only reason to explain why it doesn't build good ones.
Well,
Wait, the T-1000's pretty
okay,
good, man.
the T-1000 is very good, but it would be even better if it didn't try to be a human so much. Because it can turn it can turn its hands into knives. What if it could just shoot bullets out of itself?
They said that specifically.
It
Complex
can't turn
machinery
its hands
doesn't
into
work.
bullets, but it could just shoot bullets.
well, unfortunately, they do that in T3, and it sucks. So
Yeah, okay. But that's anyway. No, my conclusion is all the things like time travel and stuff were in development around the world, and Skynet's just discovering these things. Well, T2 introduces the weird like bootstrap paradox, but
yeah.
I mean, should we just move into T2? I suppose.
Yes.
Let's talk about T2.
Yes, please.
So the plot of T2 is basically we're some number of years in the future. I think probably about, God, how old is John? Maybe like 12, 13, 14?
I can't tell
I'd say
children's ages.
13 or 14, probably.
Yeah.
All right. So we're probably then about 13 or 14 years in the future. Sarah Connor left Mexico a little while ago for some reason and tried to blow up Cyberdyne Systems or some computer company and got locked up because she kept talking about how there's a crazy machine war coming.
Yeah,
So,
I don't know why she was telling people that.
Justifiably, she
know
was
what her
locked
plan
in a
was.
mental institution. And she is kind of trapped there, unable to prevent the future from coming to pass, when two more Terminators come back in time, one bad one and one good one. But twist, the good one's actually the Arnold Schwarzenegger one, and the bad one's a new one.
The bad one's the one that looks like a cop.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is
Whoa.
a very charged image back in 1991, and even more so now.
Yeah.
Even more so now.
This is the coolest thing in the world to me, because I think you two are the only human beings I've ever talked to ever that didn't know that Arnie was the good one from this movie on.
So did the scene absolutely blow your mind when they finally corner John in the hallway? Tell me about that moment, please.
Yeah, because I didn't get that, because even I, as a child, knew that Arnie was the good one.
Yeah, I mean, so what, like, how it kind of works, like, we already sort of talked about these entrances, so what happens is Arnie comes in again and just completely fucks up a bar of people, and, Robert Patrick's T-1000, who, side note, I'd never seen Robert Patrick in anything this old before. He's a spitting image of Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Anyway, remake this movie with Joseph Gordon-Levitt is what I'm saying. So, yeah, he comes in and he's just, like, a bit more human, but there was, like, something off about him, like, so I had this weird, like, not suspicion that he was a Terminator, but I was like, he isn't as nice as Kyle, and I thought we were doing something like that. I was like, oh, he's like a more shit human. But yeah,
and
like,
they do some
Arnie,
really clever editing too with his introduction, because like when he runs into the cop, like you see him attack the cop, but it cuts away before you see, like, what we realize later is he stabbed the guy. He used a knife hand and stabbed the guy, but we didn't, like, we don't know that yet, so they don't show it to us. And he just kind of, you just see his arm, like,
You see him punch him. Yeah, he's like,
you
oh,
see
he
him
punched him.
It looks like he punches him,
Yeah.
and then you see him in the cop uniform. You don't see him change into the uniform, but that's the assumption the viewer makes, that he took his clothes. But of course, we learn later that no, he just subsumed them.
Yeah. Right.
yeah. But like, yeah, I actually originally had in my notes that I was like, oh, like, it's a little bit on the nose how they just kind of completely redid the entrances. Like, Arnie was just the same. It's just evil Arnie again. And it's just a bar instead of some, like, overly punked punk kids. And then I was like, but, you know, they did something a little bit different with Robert Patrick's Human Man entrance. And then, yeah, the bit where John Connor was right, and then Arnie sort of had him in his sights. I was like, why isn't he fired yet? And then he tells John to get down. I was like, oh my god, he's the goodie.
That's so amazing. I mean, that's what the movie is designed for you to do. But if you go back and look at the trailers for this movie, they blow that. They spoil that.
Yeah.
And it's just
so
like
dumb.
that was the design of the movie, is they were trying to trick you going into this one. And yeah, it's really disappointing. And like like I said, I've never met anyone who didn't know that, and so it's so cool to see it work on you the way it was designed to work on you. That's so cool.
Yeah.
My
What about you,
reaction
Ruben?
was,
Yeah.
I was expecting them both to be bad, honestly, because because the cop just acts so creepily when he's like, when he's asking after Kyle and stuff. He just seems malicious to me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my theory was that he was going to be like evil Kyle. Like it was going to be like Sarah was going to be all like, oh, a guy from the future, like this will be great, help me with John. And this guy was just going to be like an arsehole and a bad influence on John or something. But yeah, I didn't expect double Terminators.
Yeah, I think you might even enjoy a rewatch because there's so many line deliveries that are so great. Where like the step parents are like, "Hey, there was a biker by here earlier looking for him," and Robert Patrick's like, "I wouldn't worry about him," and it's just perfect. It's dead perfect. But the first time you see it, you don't really get it.
Yeah.
I agree. He's menacing and wooden, and because he's a machine. Before we realize he's a machine. But I wonder if, like, when I saw this movie, I was a little kid, and when you're like a 7-year-old kid, I think you're probably a lot more respectful and reverential to police officers than I am today. So like the idea of this guy like assuming the role of a cop just like seems to bring about like respect and authority, or at least it did when I was younger, and not so much anymore. But I think it's very clever, because I think the choice James Cameron made to make him dress as a cop throughout the entire movie is definitely saying something very, very specific. But yeah, when I was a kid in the early parts of the movie, I kind of knew about it, but also was like, well, he's a cop. Those are the good guys. This is the cop. He decided to take on the role of a cop in this movie. So good guy, right? Has to be.
It's I think I had the same thought process. It is interesting that kind of the role that cops play in this movie is actually pretty different from in the first movie. In the first movie, they're good guys. They're trying to help Sarah Connor. They just don't know what the hell's going on. In this movie, they're pretty much always after our heroes, trying to catch them and maybe even kill them. In fact, they killed Miles Dyson. So
in fairness, there is a point in the movie where our heroes start acting very much against the law.
Yeah,
Yes,
I mean that's the
true.
thing.
So I'm not going to hold it too much against the cops for what is essentially a terrorist attack on a company.
Absolutely right. I'm just saying that the role that cops play in the movie is decidedly different.
Yes,
they
for
are
sure.
basically
They're
the
an
antagonists.
obstacle, not an ally.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
the first movie is a very Cold War era film, in just like the idea that there was a nuclear war that killed everyone. In that sort of setup, and I think that sort of lines up with that. And then the second one starts to tread into much more like your standard sci-fi anti-corporation, anti-the system stuff, and that's where, because they are kind of basically just being terrorists against Cyberdyne, but they're doing it for the right reasons, and so they're sort of fighting the system that's about to collapse in on itself, and the cops represent the system in that, part of it.
Yeah. Didn't the Berlin Wall fell in 89, or was it 90? I don't remember.
I think it was 91.
Was it 90? Yeah. So like, this is so fascinating to me, because I totally agree with you. I think in 1984, this is a movie that looks at nuclear annihilation and says this is inevitable, and all we can do is ensure that humanity exists beyond it. Like, so all we have to do is we have to save Sarah, not because we're going to stop the apocalypse from happening, but because at least if we save Sarah, then there will be a future beyond the apocalypse. And then 7 years later, the Cold War is coming to an end, the Berlin Wall is falling down, and suddenly, in a very 90s turn, it's not about the inevitability of the apocalypse. It's like, well, no, we can stop that. We can stop that from happening. There's something we can do to fix it. And that, I think that is such a stark difference in time and in eras, really, that these two movies represent.
Yeah. That's true.
I like that.
Yeah, it's definitely very different themes between the two movies. Definitely like very. It's almost shocking that they're both directed by James Cameron.
Yeah, for sure.
because they feel so different. T2 has this incredibly striking like coldness. It's this incredibly consistent tone of like kind of a Western kind of like everything at night is like lit like blue. It's just very, very tonally different. It's got stuff like the whole Miles Dyson part of the movie. To me, I hadn't watched this movie in years, and watching it this time, I was like, this is so intense. Like she decides her mission is, I'm gonna go murder this guy. I'm gonna go assassinate this guy who's never actually done anything wrong yet. But I have to stop the world from ending. And she has this horrible nightmare, which is an amazing part of the movie. And then she goes and she tries to kill him, which is like just I don't know. As an adult, I found that whole part way more upsetting when she tries to murder him in his own house. And then they stop her, or she stops herself, sort of. And then of course we move into the classic James Cameron double climax, which he does with all his movies. But like the Miles Dyson part in particular, I was like, wow, this is kind of incredible.
Yeah, she sort of tries to Minority Report him, basically.
Yeah.
And it's funny. The only reason she kind of fails is because she's a terrible shot for most of that scene. She unloads what's got to be like 4,000 bullets into that guy's house and somehow misses everyone.
Well, his desk was bulletproof. It's fine.
You could argue she didn't really want to succeed.
That's true. Yeah. That's true.
She comes to a realization and an ethical decision after she's tried to shoot him a bunch of times.
And shot him in the leg or whatever.
Yeah.
No, I like the role John plays in all of this as well, because one of my questions after the end of the first one is, I was like, how do you mentally cope with, like, as a child being told that you're going to be the chosen savior of humankind? Like, surely she wouldn't tell him that. And T2 kind of outlines that, yeah, she did, and like it's kind of done a number on him. Not as much as like Sarah herself is just a bit of a mess in this movie psychologically. But John goes from just sort of running away from it all to like actually accepting it. And you can start to see that, you know, leader of humanity type person in how good he is in the second half of this film.
Yeah, I mean, his interaction with Arnold Schwarzenegger is some of the most wonderful parts of the movie, and that's why I love this movie. Their interactions together, like even the moment where they realize that Linda Hamilton is driving off to kill Dyson, and Arnie's like, "Well, that would stop the apocalypse," and he's like, "Don't you get it? Don't you understand why you can't kill people yet?" And that's like part of his entire thing is learning the value of life, like the irony of a Terminator learning the value of life. But yeah, I mean, I love this thing. Like, there's so much of this world that we don't see here, where like John was raised being told all this stuff. She was very upfront with him about everything. She was training him. She was teaching him to be a leader, to be a military commander from birth, basically. And he just kind of went along with it. And then sometime in the not too distant past of this movie, she was taken up and he was told by other adults, hey, your mom's actually crazy. Like, all the stuff she was saying, that's not real. Everything, your whole life has been a lie. And that's where he's at when we meet him, is he's like kind of completely come to understand and believe that this was all bullshit. He's nobody special. And now he's living with these shitty step parents or foster parents that he doesn't give a shit about. And it's a really fascinating choice. I love it.
Yeah. The foster parents. I was just thinking about the T-1000 just murdering everyone. So I just wanted to briefly contrast like the horror stuff in this movie with the horror stuff in the last movie, where again it's like that coldness, or like T-1000 is like stabbing people through the eye with his finger, and it's like it feels very different.
Well, what's funny is in that first chunk of the movie where they're pretending the T-1000 is like the human savior a little bit, like it does a much better job emulating people. So like there's still something off about it, but it was so much more human than Arnie. And then that really just goes away after that reveal, and it's just sort of like, I think the only lines it has after that point are like specifically when it's imitating people.
Yeah,
basically. Yeah, that's a nice bike. Yeah, I
but he takes the bike. That's what's so fascinating. Like the T-1000 choosing to be a cop is the most fascinating thing in the world, because as you guys have said, he keeps going back to that form. He likes it. He likes dressing like the cop. And part of it is because he's abusing the authority that police officer gives him to get into places that he wouldn't. He basically can just exist in the system without consequence because he's the role of the police officer, which again is a very pointed commentary that the movie is making. That this guy just like everywhere he gets, he just walks in because no one's going to stop him. Whereas our characters have to like sneak in or shoot the place up or anything. He can just go there. But he also, he keeps going back to it. Like he likes it. He likes dressing like a cop. And like he gets the bike, and then now he's riding on the bike, and he's still the same cop, but now he's like cop biker guy. Like it's just so funny to me.
And then he trades the bike for a police helicopter. So he's just constantly swapping out tokens of authority. And
then he says, "Get out," just like Arnie said in the first one. Because these movies reference each other so much.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of callbacks to Terminator 1 in this film.
My favorite one was when they're in the hospital busting out Sarah Connor, and she sees Arnie and obviously rightfully kind of freaks out. And the first thing that he says to her that starts to turn her around is, "Come with me if you want to live," which is obviously what Kyle said to her at the start. And it's just this moment of like, wait, what? How does he know to say that? Oh shit, something else is going on here, which I thought was a great moment.
That's one of my favorite parts of the movie, is when like she has been completely badass, consistently, complete hard ass up till that moment when the elevator opens, and then she just freaks out and is just screaming, and it just unfolds so beautifully. I love
Linda Hamilton in this movie, and I don't know if you guys are aware, like the choice for her to be this badass like soldier person was entirely hers. She was like, I think this is what my character should be now, and she sold James Cameron on it, and she like worked out like crazy to get the really hard body, and it's just an incredible performance. She's so good in this movie, and it's so funny to go like to watch these movies back to back, and you see the Sarah Connor of the opening of T1 and how different she is, how much this has changed her. And like what I love about it is I think you can still see a little bit of the same person in there. Like it's not like this is an entirely different character. Like you can see the transformation throughout both of these movies. I think it's great.
Yeah, I did watch them I watched one Friday night and the other one Saturday night. And yeah, like it was a great journey. I'm glad that decision was made to turn her into a badass, because like I think that was the only direction you could have gone apart from just making her genuinely insane. Because the best badass characters are the ones that are incredibly traumatized, and that's obviously Sarah Connor to a T. Like she's someone who's turned into this badass in part because she's trying to confront the fact that murderous robots are constantly time traveling in to kill her. So she's a badass, but she's also just like incredibly fucked up because of all these events, and that's like just such a great combo.
Yeah. Well, I love the 1-2 punch of like the weight of being responsible for the future of humanity, and then the weight of knowing that all these people are going to die. Like those are two things that pull on her. And in T2, it's definitely more of the latter, definitely more of like, she's constantly haunted by the fact that any day now, everyone's going to die. And my only mission is to survive long enough to teach my son to do the important things after that. And I'm gonna have to sit here and watch 9 billion people. I forget how many it was, but a lot of billion people die.
That's the thing. She's not trying to fix it. Like she's just having to walk around knowing that she's condemning most of the people she meets to die because her focus is on after.
Yeah. And it is like eventually that just gets too much for her, and she has to act.
I'm sure you guys.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sure you guys have seen the GIF of the skeleton, blowing apart on the fence prior to this, but like that's the perfect example of her being haunted by this, the dream.
Yeah, I hadn't put that together. I like that.
Yeah, now that you say that, I have seen that GIF. It just didn't click as, that's from this.
Yeah.
Yep.
I had a few moments of, that's from Terminator. Like, they come with me if you want to live. I did not know that was from Terminator. That was one of those, like, it's from some 80s movie or something. So that was a TIL type situation.
The thing that I love about that scene where the bomb goes off is that she's watching a younger version of herself play with a younger version of her son. that's so fascinating because she's got like the 80s hair that she has in T1, and I think she's wearing like a diner, I don't remember precisely, but I think she's wearing like a waitress uniform as well or something like that. And that's such a fascinating choice because like that she's like putting this on, she's putting like watching her and her son die to this thing, although she knows they won't. So it's almost as if she's like literally transporting the fate onto the version of herself that maybe would have existed before all this happened. Mm-hmm. And like, so almost literally like, this is what it would like this. Imagine dying this way myself. Mm-hmm. And then of course, like the powerful imagery of her being behind the fence and like screaming to warn them and no one's listening and she's powerless to stop it. It's all just really, really wonderfully constructed. I love that scene.
Yeah, I agree. Like it's basically like the whole thing is she's starting to wrestle with this. Like it could be her. Like, you know, there's you know, aside from, you know, time traveling robots, there's no reason she wouldn't be just one of these people who's about to die, and that's sort of what this dream is, her confronting like that idea. And as you said, it's just her struggling with the fact that it should be her as well, and eventually she makes that right decision.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and that's the moment, of course, when she decides she's going to go kill Miles Dyson because she's, you know, feels compelled to it. But then they decide, no, we're going to go blow up the machine factory instead. I wanted to talk about. So this is one thing I'm curious about is like I feel like the whole basically from the time they go to the Cyberdyne building to the end of the movie is to me one of the all-time great action movie sequence things of all time. Like
yes,
and like if you say it's I'm interested to hear your reaction because now obviously movies get so much bigger, you know, they get so much bigger than that. But like in terms of just the sequence of things and the pieces that are in play and the drama of it, it like there's just nothing better for my money.
I mean, yeah, I still thought it was very good. It's so much fun. Arnie's moment with the minigun where he's not killing people is great. Actually, just so we did talk about there's the hilarious joke where he's like, I'm not going to kill people, so he kneecaps that poor security guard.
He'll live.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you're right. There's so many things, and you're waiting for the T-1000 to show up for the whole thing. Like there's so much going on. It is like just a fantastic sequence. At a point where I actually thought the movie was like, because that starts like an hour and a half in. I was like, oh, we must be about to wrap up now. And then it was like, nope, whole huge action scene.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean by the classic James Cameron double ending because it's sort of like there's one whole action scene at the Cyberdyne factory, and then they have a car chase on the freeway from there to the smelting plant or whatever it is, and then there's a whole nother awesome sequence where the T-1000 is hunting them through the smelting plant, has this knockdown drag out fight with Arnold where he gets all torn up, and then like tries to torture Sarah Connor, and then it's just like thing after thing after thing. It's like, and it's not just like cool spectacle. I think that's what I love about it. It's not just cool. It's not just like look what we can do with special effects. It's like we've put all these pieces in place. You now care about the Terminator. You now care about Sarah Connor and John Connor and their relationship, and so you feel it too. It's not just cool. It's not just cool action.
Yeah, what I love about it. What I love about it is everyone has something to do. Even in the Cyberdyne part, like John Connor, like Eddie Furlong is not the best actor in the world. He has some lines that are like a little clunky and like, but you're a kid. But the movie constantly gives him stuff to do. And I love that like we got to see this setup with the ATM hacking that was done early in the movie pays off since he's able to hack in and get the movie like it just sets up and pays off and always gives its characters a purpose to be in the scene. Like there's never really a scene where a character is just kind of completely sidelined and like, well, what are you going to do now? They're always doing something. They're always working towards something. Like Linda Hamilton has so much to do in this movie. Like her and Arnold are basically a team from the moment they get together. They work together to win and run. And like I love the moment where she's grabbing the bulletproof vests and like putting them in the window of the van as they're driving away. Like it's just like all the smart little detail stuff. Like she's so key to everything. I love it all.
Yeah.
I thought they did a really great job of making it believable that, you know, she has spent whatever 13 years teaching John about all these weapons things and all these bits and pieces, so that when this child is playing a part during these gunfights or doing whatever the scene is, it feels like he's a child, but it feels like he's, you know, it feels like he has earned stuff to do, and it doesn't feel weird that he's still a part of the scene. It's just very elegant how it all ties together.
Yeah. And the frustrating scene in the movie to me is when she almost beats the T-1000 on her own. Like she's one arm like cocking the shotgun and like pushing him right up to the ledge, and then just runs out of bullets. I'm always like, I've watched this movie so many times and I still get to that point and I'm like, just one more. It was just one more. It's such a good moment.
Yeah. And then following up on that, I think one of my favorite moments is you're not sure what happened to her exactly. And she's looking for John in the factory. You know she's looking for John. John sees her and walks up to her, and you're like, she seems kind of weak. She doesn't really seem like herself. And then you see hardened badass Sarah Connor behind her saying, you know, in the way she really behaves, "Get out of the way, John." And you're like, yeah, that's perfect. Everything about this movie is perfect.
Yes.
Yeah, it's held up remarkably well. I just okay. This is my little pet peeve, and this is so nothing, but the whole reason they're sort of in the smelting plant is because they've got the Terminator arm from the first one, and they need to destroy it so people can't reverse engineer it anymore. And then Arnie loses his arm in the factory.
Of course,
they don't go back and get it. I was just yelling at them the whole time. I was like, "You've got to go get Arnie's arm." The same shit's about, like, if that's not the plot of Terminator 3, then I agree. It's a complete trash film, because that arm is sitting there just waiting to repeat, or just waiting to set things exactly back in motion.
So
the chip's more important than the arm. It was really the chip.
Yeah, to be honest, I never noticed that, but now that you pointed it out, I actually like it more, because it implies that they have like accidentally done a complete closed time loop. I mean, you're right that the chip was destroyed, but I mean, obviously, I don't know. I feel like they would have had backup files on the chip, though. You know.
Oh yeah, I mean, Cyberdyne's a big military contractor. They would have had offsite backups, but that's fine. I'm not going to criticize a movie for not doing something like that, because that's just...
this was 1991. Offsite backup. We didn't do that shit.
No,
you're probably right. But it doesn't matter.
I really like that, though. I mean, I like the whole bit where the T-1000 just beats the shit out of him. Like, that's a great, you know.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he's like the shitty old model, right?
Yeah.
Like he's the crappy one.
Yeah.
The underdog, and it's really great.
Yeah, it's great because throughout the movie he's accumulating damage. At first it's pretty minor, but it gets worse and worse. And of course T-1000 is spotless the entire time because he just regenerates, and then by the end he's just he's just in terrible shape. I think me and my brother would play this scenario out with the smashing and the ripping off of the arm repeatedly. Anyway, this is definitely a very formative movie.
I love the change in the sort of Terminator's imagery. Like in the first one, the red eye is such a fantastic horror mechanic. Like that red eye is so haunting. And then in the end of the second one, it's like devastating when it gets to the point where his red eye is back out, because I'm like, oh no, he's dying. Like, you know, put that red eye away. It's too sad. And the T-1000 is just this completely different form of horror. Like they start to have so much fun with just fucking up the T-1000's body and then like having it put itself back together again. Like, the bit where it dies and it just gets like turned into
fucking Cronenberged.
yeah.
And starts screeching. Like suddenly it just has this inhuman screech feature, which is just like a perfect ending. Yeah, like I just love how they flipped over the original Terminator 1 and also introduced this T-1000 that was just horrifying in a completely different way.
Yeah, and the computer graphics have held up so well.
I was surprised at how good it all looks.
Yeah,
it was a good example of like less is more. Like they just did some shiny reflective material, and that sort of thing holds up very well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and like the thing, the special effects, like you can tell 7 years have gone by because all of it's better. Even the moments where they're not using CG, or if it's like Arnold standing there holding up the mechanical Arnold arm when he shows it to Dyson. Even that, like, that's seamless. Even the makeup effects when half his face has been metalified, right? That just looks really solid. Like, there's no moment, I think, where you can clearly see that the movie switches between model and Arnold that there was in the first one.
I don't know how they did the cutting off his forearm flesh thing without CGI. Like, it looks perfect to me. I don't know.
I was really looking this time for, like, if I could see, like, where his real arm is, right? Like, like I couldn't find it. So I don't know how they did it either. They did a lot of crazy shit for this movie. The craziest thing that they did that you guys didn't actually get to see because it was a deleted scene is there was a mirror shot in the movie. But James Cameron, like, wanted to do the camera directly behind the mirror. Like, and therefore the camera would show up in the mirror. And so that doesn't work. You can't shoot a mirror shot that way. But he really, really wanted to do it. So instead of doing a mirror, they hired Linda Hamilton's twin, and it's just built to look like a mirror, and she's just mirroring all her sister's moves.
That's insane.
In the shot. It's just insane. And then they cut it. They cut it from the movie.
I didn't realize she had a twin. How do you not use? Oh man, what insanity!
That's hilarious. I didn't even know that. The only deleted scene I know about is that in the first scene when she's stitching up his bullet holes, there's a deleted scene where they take out his brain chip so that they can turn it on to learning mode, which is why the subsequent scene where John says, "Are we learning yet?" Makes sense.
Okay.
And then Sarah Connor is like, "All right, let's smash it." And John stops her.
I think that's the scene, Matt. I think that's the scene.
Okay.
Yeah, they're just doing that. It's shot into a mirror.
I didn't know that.
Wait, I saw that scene.
Okay.
I'm picturing. I saw this scene, like, you know, Linda Hamilton takes out the brain, and John's like, "Okay, we're going to turn it to learning mode," but then she tries to smash it with a hammer. Is that the scene we're talking about?
Yeah, that's a deleted scene. Maybe
that wasn't in the movie that you guys saw.
Maybe you watched like the director's cut version or something.
Yeah, you probably should watch the director's cut. That's fine. I don't know if I've actually watched the director's cut, honestly.
Oh my God. I'm going back now and looking at the scene specifically to look at the mirror stuff. I don't know if is it the right one?
That's funny.
I'm not seeing. There is
Maybe
some.
I'm wrong.
Oh yeah, there is stuff.
That's not Linda Hamilton. That's her sister. Every time the camera is directly looking into the mirror, that's her sister mirroring her movements.
Wait,
oh my God,
that can't be right.
That's awesome.
That's James Cameron. That's what he does.
That's insane. If that's insane.
I have to assume T2 had a much higher budget as well, like as well as 7 years of special effects improving, but like just based on the fact, I think Scott, you mentioned in the prescription, Arnie had just taken off in stardom, and I can't remember exactly when James Cameron took off, but I just imagine this was one of those points where they're like, "Here, have 10 times the amount of money you did before," and he was like, "Cool, I'm gonna spend it on good graphics and also some helicopters."
Yeah, I feel like any one of those action set pieces at the end probably cost more than the whole first movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I just looked it up. The original budget for the Terminator was $6.4 million. The budget for T2 was $100 million.
Yeah.
Which, I mean...
but adjust for inflation.
Yeah, but still, back in 91, this is before super, like, big budget films happened. Like, you just did not spend $100 million on a movie very much back in the 90s, especially the early 90s. Like, The Matrix in 99 was $63 million. $100 million for a movie is insane in 1991.
Well, it shows. It looks beautiful.
Scene, all the car chase scenes in T2 are phenomenal. Like, the T-1000 always seems to end up in a big truck and pushing things off the road as it chases people on, like, bikes. It's great.
Yeah. And of course, you just know that, like, the helicopter chasing the truck scene, like, that they must have really done that, right? Because they didn't.
Yeah, the helicopter went under a bridge.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so good.
What a good movie. So 10 out of 10, right, guys?
Not to influence.
Well, are we going to rate them together or separately?
Gotta rate them separately, I would say.
Separately. Okay. I feel like I'm going to upset you all because I think I liked T1 more than I liked T2. Is that an insane thing to say? I feel like the horror movie vibe of it just worked on me more than the action movie vibe of T2.
Okay. I think that, as I said, there's like a beauty in the simplicity of T1, but I think T2 does so much cool stuff from there that, like, I'd have to give it a higher number. Like,
Fair
it's one
enough.
of the best sequels I've ever seen.
Yes, I think that's true. I did like them both quite a lot, but I'm reflecting back on it. I feel like the one that feels the most like it's going to leave a lasting emotional impression on me is T1, just because of the sheer horrorness of the original Terminator.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
and I think I can understand part of this is even like, and kind of what I was groping for with my question about like, do you think this is the best action scene of all time? Is like, well, obviously we have. I don't want to say better because I don't know what that word means in this context, but like we have action scenes that look better. We like just there's been so many damn movies since this movie came out. Like, but when I was a kid, this was definitely the best thing there was, and so it's just lodged in my brain as being like this. You'll never beat this, but that's just because I grew up with it, and so I can accept. I mean, and I agree. Actually, T1 is a great movie. It is really fun showing people your nostalgia movies because they never really react the way you expect them to, but it's still rewarding.
Yeah, definitely.
So, Elliot, why don't you go first with your numbers?
Sure. Well, so I was going to give T1 like an 8 out of 10. And I wanted to give T2 like a 9 out of 10. I think I actually just loved Terminator 2 so much.
I'm probably
going to go on and watch the others now, despite like everyone's going to tell me
Do it.
don't
Do it.
I can't not do it. I love the second one so much. I need more, and I know that's not what I'm going to get, but I'm going to try.
I think I'm going to reverse those and give it 1 a 9 and 2 an 8. I think that feels right to me.
I can live with that. Matt, how do you feel about it?
I mean, we now know that Elliot and Ruben are extremely stingy with their high scores. So sure,
Yeah,
sure, we can accept.
What have we ever given a 10 to, Elliot?
I don't think we've given out a single 10.
Good on us.
I think there's been
Yeah.
2 9.5s, and that's it.
Which was Worm and The Good Wife?
The
Is that
Magnus
right?
Archives.
Oh, the Magnus Archives. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
I can
But,
I
I mean, our
stand by
system's just a joke.
No, it's very
that our
data
system
driven
is
and
consistent.
accurate. All right. Well, thanks, both of you. Thanks, Scott and Matt, for coming on the show. If people want to hear more of your media discussion and general things, they can check out a lot of the podcasts on the Doof Media Network, specifically Kingslingers and the Doofcast, I suppose.
Yeah. That is true. I kind of plugged Kingslingers in the middle of your show because that's what I do everywhere now. But yeah, we're going through the Dark Tower series one book at a time, and we're on book 4 now, and it's been a whole lot of fun. And then the Doofcast is just our like variety show where we just talk about whatever. Last week when is this coming out?
In a few days. So
On
the most
Thursday.
recent episode, I think, will still be 1770, whatever it is.
Yes, it comes out the day before the next one.
Okay, so the episode that's about to come out is our Deconstructing Fincher series, where we're going to be talking about The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Oh,
This is
fun.
our penultimate film in that series, Matt, I think. I'd have to look at that. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either, but that sounds right.
Can't wait. Yeah, thanks for joining us, folks.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Now, Elliot, what are you going to bring us for next fortnight?
Yes. So next fortnight, I am bringing you the sci-fi original series, kind of, Battlestar Galactica.
Mm-hmm.
So this
Now,
is
this is one of them like Star Trek, Stargates kind of deals?
Yep. It's
Farscapes,
it's
etc.
space sci-fi. I mean, I think I have specifically brought up Battlestar Galactica numerous times on this podcast, definitely outside of it, for how like I often lament what it's done to sci-fi television. In that since Battlestar Galactica got big, all space sci-fi has had to be dark and serious, and really The Expanse is pretty much the only thing that's lived up to that. So like I often complain about how Battlestar Galactica ruined things like Stargate and blah blah blah, but there's a reason everyone tried to copy it and why it completely changed this entire sub industry. It's because it's real good. And I do really, really enjoy it. So, I guess I think it's something you'll really like, and I thought it's something we should actually talk about because it's very dark and brooding, but like in a very, very good way.
Yeah, okay. Cool. Interesting. I don't know what to pick at. I guess that we've talked about a number of like science fiction TV shows. Our first ever episode was on Stargate. We've talked about Dark Matter, The Expanse. God, so
Yeah.
many. We talked about Legends of Tomorrow, I'm pretty sure, which is basically
I guess
one.
that counts. Yeah, this is the Expanse.
Firefly.
Yeah, the Expanse and
Yeah.
Firefly would be the closest to this. Much more the
Right.
Expanse. It's a very dark and serious. So it's set basically humanity is spread throughout 12 colonies, different planets, and it's set. And it's funny. I actually picked this out a while ago, and obviously, with what we've just done with Matt and Scott, there's some nice thematic resonance here. 40 years ago, there was a massive war against some AI. There was an AI uprising. So there's sort of a worker class of grunts called the Cylons. This AI sort of rose up, went to war against the humans. Eventually, this truce was declared, and the Cylons disappeared into space and sort of said they were going away and they didn't want to come back anymore. And this obviously picks up 40 years later, where I guess, mild spoilers, the Cylons did not go away forever. And this war sort of reignites. And it's just as a show, it has such interesting characters. The premise you'll get into more as you get into it is really good. It works off of the characters thematically. This show does some of the most interesting stuff with religion that I've ever seen in any show, which is surprising for a space sci-fi show to tackle so competently. Yeah, there's so much interesting stuff going on in this series that I can't get into now because I don't want to taint any of your perceptions going in.
Yeah, sure.
But the only other thing I want to, because you have to go. There's sort of two Battlestar Galactica series. There's a really old 1978 one. Don't watch that one. I haven't seen it. I don't know what it's about. But then this series started in 2003, and it was actually a mini series. So Sci-Fi made it. It's 2 hour-and-a-half long episodes, and technically that's all I'm really prescribing to you today. That's sort of, if you can get through that 3 hours, I think we'll have lots to talk about in 2 weeks. But what happened is that 3 hour mini series was such a big hit that they sort of used it as a platform to launch a full-on TV show.
Right.
So if you go to, something like this is on Prime Video in Australia. So if you go to Prime Video and search Battlestar Galactica, the first hit will be the TV show that's from 2004 to 2009.
Right.
If you go to the start of that, you basically...
I'll have missed the first season.
Yes, and it'll just open where it'll be previously, and it'll just spoil the entire 3 hour miniseries for you.
Okay.
So
I getcha.
If anybody's going to be watching it like this, definitely 100% make sure you're looking at the 2003 miniseries to start, because you need to watch the 3 hours of that, because the TV show picks up a little bit of time after that miniseries, but it completely relies on what happens in that miniseries to define itself.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thanks for the word of warning, I suppose.
But it's so good. I actually sat down to watch the first 15 minutes of the mini-series and prep for this. Ended up watching the whole 3 hours and then also an episode of the TV show. So I'm right back into it.
Good on you. You've been rehooked. That's always good. That's always a good sign when you get rehooked before you prescribe something.
Yeah. So, yes, my summary of this show would be, I hate what it's done to the industry at large, but the reason it was able to do it is because it's real fucking good at what it does.
Yep. Fair enough. All right, cool. Well, I guess I'll go off and watch it then, and we'll talk about it in more detail specifically next time.
Yes, I can't wait.
Thanks Scott and Matt for joining us. Again, if people want to check out more stuff with them, you can head to the Duff Media site. There's a bunch of shows on there. If you want to leave us your thoughts on Battlestar Galactica, though, you can shoot us an email at mediamdpodcast@gmail.com.
Yep, and after you're done checking out Matt and Scott's other stuff on Duff, why don't you check out our other stuff on Duff? Because we have things outside of Media MD. We just released some bonus content on the We've Got Ward feed, actually. Ruben and I spent about an hour talking all things Ward.
Yep, we went so deep into Ward, the deepest anyone's ever gone, and we only did it in an hour. Not like Scott and Matt, who took, 2 years to go into it? Come on.
Unbelievable.
Scrubs.
There's obviously our other show, Pale Reflections, which Matt and Scott were just on as well, actually. We've been doing a lot of crossover content with them recently.
Look at this brand synergy. Love it. For more information on that, you can also check out our Patreon, where you can also support us and become a patron. That is patreon.com/duffmedia. There's all kinds of cool bonuses that you get for supporting us at different levels. So do it.
Yeah.
You can find links to all those things that I just mentioned on the Duff website, which is duffmedia.com. And while you're there, you can also find all of the previous clues for the Media MD ARG. You can help us figure out just who is Dr. MD and why is his robot so friendly. Elliot, why don't you tell the listeners this fortnight's clue?
Circuit board.
Circuit board, and we'll see you next fortnight.